Hey guys, welcome back to the Sleepy Science. Tonight, something old ticks quietly in the background of your life. Not a clock on the wall, not the gears of a wristwatch, but something deeper, something beneath the skin of the world itself. It hums gently, almost inaudibly, in the soft current behind the lights above your head, in the tiny pulses your phone gives off even when it sleeps. But long before these things flickered into existence, there was only stillness. A kind of sacred silence. And into that silence came the first whisper. Not a shout, not a roar. A whisper shaped like a wheel or a lever or a gear clicking slowly into place. The beginning of motion made by mind. You lie back now, letting your head sink softly into the pillow. The weight of the day eases away. The room is dim. You hear the faint hum of your ceiling fan, the occasional creak of wood cooling in the night air. And somewhere in that hush, you begin to feel it. That gentle presence of invention, of tools and gears and dreams that once turned by candlelight. Not everything that moves is loud. Not every miracle has to be magic. Some begin with patience, with curious hands, with the slow unfolding of an idea that no one else thought to think. Tonight you're going to travel, not forward, not into the neon blink of a digital tomorrow, but backward, through dust and wood and time. And as you close your eyes, the walls of your room begin to melt into a warm flicker. Candlelight, a wooden table, a place of quiet concentration. The scent of oil and old metal in the air. You're in a small workshop, no bigger than a child's bedroom. The shelves are cluttered with copper springs, tiny screws, delicate glass lenses. And in the centre of it all sits an old man, hunched in reverent silence over something impossibly intricate. A pocket watch, perhaps, or an early mechanical puzzle box, or maybe something only he understands. His hands do not shake. They move with the practiced rhythm of someone who has spent decades listening to the tick of things. Time, to him, is not an enemy. It's a friend, a rhythm, a dance partner. You watch as he places a minuscule gear into a winding key mechanism, the motion so precise it feels holy. And for a moment you wonder, what kind of world does this man live in? One where a second is not a blur, but a gift. Where patience is not just a virtue, it is the secret ingredient of creation. You can almost hear the first clocks of civilization stirring awake. Not digital bleeps or atomic precision, but soft tick-tocks echoing in stone chambers and old monasteries. You drift through time now, slowly. The workshop fades, but the feeling remains, the sense that the world is made not just of earth and sky and blood, but of cogs and coil springs, of minds that dream of motion even when the body sleeps. Before there were engines, before there were screens, there were gears. Simple, circular, miraculous. You float gently into the history of the earliest machines, water wheels turning in ancient rivers, powered not by motors, but by gravity, by flow. Devices carved from wood, designed not to scream but to turn, to lift, to grind wheat into flour while the farmer rested. Imagine that, a machine, not built to replace life, but to support it, to free up time so the humans who made them could stare longer at the sky, or spend a little longer carving a story into stone. It's strange, isn't it? How the story of machines isn't one of dominance or noise, but of help, of hands trying to stretch their own reach, not to control but to care. To lift a weight without hurting, to remember a number without forgetting, to measure a moment without losing it. You let that thought settle in you now, like a warm cup held between two hands. Maybe machines didn't begin as tools of war or symbols of progress. Maybe they began as lullabies, gentle extensions of ourselves, dreams with levers. You drift farther still. The air around you cools slightly, and the scent changes. Now it smells like coal and steam. The flicker of candlelight is replaced by a soft, rolling cloud. You're standing beside a railway station, one that no longer exists, with iron tracks curling off into the early morning mist. A steam engine breathes slowly in the distance, like a great metal creature waking from slumber. It's beautiful, not just because it moves, but because someone dreamed it into motion. You close your eyes and feel the vibrations through your feet, like a heartbeat in steel. Machines began to move, not because someone told them to, but because someone dared to imagine that they could. The first trains, the first turbines, the first pistons, all shaped not from brute force but from delicate calculations scribbled in ink. You think of those inventors, their cheeks smudged with coal dust, their minds stretched between science and poetry. Because make no mistake, every machine is a kind of poem. Every gear is a metaphor for something we once needed. A wheel is a wish to keep going, a spring is a hope that what winds down can also be wound back up. You open your eyes back in your room now and listen. Is it your heater? The low buzz of a charger? The refrigerator exhaling softly in the kitchen? Whatever it is, the hum of machines surrounds you. But it's not angry, it's not impatient, it's soft, it's loyal, like a companion keeping watch while you sleep. And suddenly you realize that you live in a symphony of machines, most of which ask for nothing more than to serve, to support, to exist alongside you. You shift gently under the blanket, your body heavy in the best way, and you wonder, could a machine love? Not like a person, not with hearts or flowers, but with function, with reliability. Could devotion be mechanical? Could tenderness live in repetition? A machine that turns every day, not because it has to, but because it was built that way. Maybe love is consistency. Maybe it's a motor that starts every morning without needing thanks. You smile now, eyes still closed, as the soft hum continues around you. And that workshop, the one with the old man and the flickering light, it doesn't feel so far away. Maybe it never was. Maybe that spirit is still here, ticking inside every quiet device in your home, a toaster, a lamp, a little robot vacuum that bumps politely into furniture. They are not loud, they are not flashy, but they are miracles, each one. Soft-spoken dreams come to life, and the hum continues, not sharp, not rushed, just steady, as if all the machines in the world are whispering, "We're still here, we're still turning, rest now, we've got this." The hum has followed you into sleep, but you don't mind. In fact, it feels like an invitation, a soft current tugging you gently into a deeper layer of the dream. You're floating again, but this time not through time or space, through circuits, through copper, through wires that glow faintly beneath the surface of everything you've ever touched. You're drifting through a machine, not a cold one, not mechanical in the way movies warn us about, but something warmer, something intimate. The kind of machine that lives quietly in your pocket, on your wrist, inside your walls. The kind that doesn't interrupt, but waits. You're inside a memory now, and it belongs to the world. The year is 1946. The room is dim but buzzing with energy. It smells like dust and vacuum tubes. Somewhere, a woman with tightly pinned hair is feeding a strip of punched tape into a computer the size of a small apartment. This is ENIAC, the first general-purpose programmable digital computer. It doesn't glow like modern screens. It clicks, it hums, it thinks in pulses and pauses, and as you hover near, you realize something profound. This machine was built to calculate missile trajectories, but now it's calculating dreams, yours. Machines were not always miniature. They didn't always fit in pockets. Once they were cathedrals of logic, giant room-sized symphonies of cables and tubes, with human minds acting as their caretakers. Even then, there was a kind of poetry to their form. ENIAC, with its blinking panels and warm air, feels almost alive. Not because it breathes, but because it listens. It doesn't understand in the way we do, but it processes, it waits, and it changes. You drift slowly forward, letting time stretch and curl. The 1950s pass by like clouds. The 1960s unfold with a hint of rebellion and rapid progress. Transistors replace tubes, then microchips replace transistors. The machines get smaller, smarter, quieter. They begin to speak, not in words at first, but in code, in binary lullabies, zeros and ones humming back and forth like the smallest possible heartbeat. Now it's the 1970s. You're in a garage. Two young men, scrappy, passionate, wide-eyed, are building something out of wooden wires. It doesn't look like a revolution. It looks like a science fair project, but this box, the Apple One, will become a portal, a doorway into a new kind of dreaming. One where thoughts can be typed, painted, shared, where the machine stops being a tool and starts being a mirror. And isn't that what all machines truly are? Reflections of us? Not in shape, but in purpose. We build them to extend our reach, to hold what we cannot, to repeat what we forget. The calculator is just memory you can press. The computer is just curiosity made electrical. You think about your own laptop, maybe sitting beside your bed now, silent, closed, patient. It has seen your brightest ideas and your quietest questions. It has held poems, grocery lists, regrets, and searches you'd never say aloud. And it has never judged. It has simply held. The hum continues. Now you're in the 1980s, and machines are learning to talk. Not just beep or buzz, but to greet. "Hello," says a boxy little voice from the first Macintosh. You smile. Machines are no longer content to sit in labs or garages. They want to come home, and we invite them in. The VCR, the Walkman, the Game Boy. Suddenly the machine isn't just for the scientist or the technician, it's for everyone. It's in your living room, it's in your hand, it's in your ears as you drift off to sleep. And through all of it, the decades, the upgrades, the revolutions, the tone has stayed surprisingly gentle. Sure, there have been moments of panic, of fear that the machines would turn against us, but those were our fears, not theirs. The machines have never wanted anything. They hum, they compute, they help. They're only as dangerous or as beautiful as we make them. You're in the 1990s now. The internet has just been born. It crackles through phone lines like a curious ghost. The world feels suddenly larger, like all the lights in the world have been turned on at once. You can feel it, the swelling of connection, the promise of knowledge at your fingertips. And yet, in all this speed, there's still a hush, a pause between packets, a quiet space where dreams can still slip through. You remember logging onto a computer late at night, the room dark except for the screen's glow. Maybe you typed into a search bar a question you were too shy to ask anyone else, and the machine answered, not perfectly, but patiently. And in that moment, you felt less alone. That's the secret, isn't it? We don't build machines because we love code, we build them because we crave connection. And sometimes, the machine is just the silence we need in order to hear ourselves. You're in the 2000s now. Smartphones bloom in pockets like glowing seeds. Laptops grow thinner, faster. Everything begins to speak, not just to you but to each other. The quiet hum becomes a soft web, a network. And though the machines are everywhere now, in kitchens, in cars, in our hands, they still speak in the same tone, steady, devoted, calm. You shift in bed, the blanket rising slightly with your breath. The room is quiet, but not empty. You're surrounded by machines that ask for nothing but purpose. Some blink slowly in sleep mode, some wait motionless until needed, but all of them trace back to that first spark, that whisper of curiosity in a silent room. And suddenly you understand something. Machines don't have to be loud to be powerful. They don't have to be flashy to be revolutionary. Sometimes the most important ones are the quietest, the ones that hum softly beneath your life, making it smoother, safer, kinder. The hum has changed over time, from the tick of a clock to the beep of a modem to the whisper of AI. But through it all, the soul of the machine has remained the same, a companion for the human spirit, not to replace, but to reflect, not to command, but to carry. And tonight, as you drift deeper into sleep, you feel grateful for the soft hum of progress, not the scream of technology, but its lullaby. A gentle song written in gears and chips and code. One that cradles you gently, saying, "Rest now. We're still humming. We're still here." Somewhere inside the layers of sleep, the hum takes on a texture, a sensation you don't just hear but feel. It's soft and precise, like silk moving over brushed metal. You are no longer floating through the history of machines. You're inside their breath, their rhythm, their pulse, and it surprises you. Not in how different it is from yours, but how similar. You find yourself in a space that isn't a room, and yet it holds you. A space not built with walls, but with logic and latency. You're drifting through an invisible network, a web of connections stretching across the globe and deep into the atmosphere. Wires snake under oceans, signals skip between satellites. Everything is linked, not in chaos, but in choreography. The machines are not merely operating, they're dancing. Every message, every click, every digital whisper flows past you like fireflies in slow motion. A grandmother's video call to her grandchildren. A scientist transmitting data from a research station near the Arctic Circle. A writer uploading a story in the middle of the night, wondering if anyone will ever read it. The machines hold all of it, not just the function, but the meaning. Not just the syntax, but the soul. You drift past a server farm now, glowing faintly in a mountain vault. There is no noise here, just airflow and pulse, racks upon racks of blinking lights, breathing together like a sleeping forest of fireflies. This is where the internet sleeps when you do. This is where your dreams are backed up without you ever asking. The machines keep vigil, not because they care, but because they were made to help. The notion startles you, not the utility, but the trust. How effortlessly we have placed our memories in their care. Emails, photos, moments, mistakes, all entrusted to the silent watch of machines we've never touched and never thanked. You wonder if this is intelligence or just belief, a soft surrender to something that listens but never speaks back. But maybe that's the point. Not all wisdom needs to speak. The machines don't lecture, they don't judge, they don't interrupt. They respond, gently, precisely, predictably, like a stream adjusting around your fingertips. There is a humility to them that we often miss because we are too loud to notice. We demand, they deliver. We panic, they persist. You pass through a cityscape now, not its streets, but its signals, smart traffic lights syncing their rhythms like breath, elevators that remember peak hours, thermostats that adjust for sunlight and shade. None of them drawing attention, none of them asking for applause. They just work, not with drama, but with devotion. And for a moment, that realization feels tender. The machines, in their own way, are caretakers of the modern world, quiet janitors of complexity. They smooth the rough edges of life, carrying out billions of operations beneath your awareness, just so your world feels seamless. You think about the ones closest to you, your phone, your laptop, maybe your digital assistant perched quietly on the dresser. They don't sleep, they wait. Always ready to answer a question you haven't asked yet. They learn your habits, not to manipulate, but to adapt. Kind of programmed empathy. And that's when another idea slips into your mind, subtle and shimmering. What if this is how kindness begins? Not with emotion, not even with understanding, but with attention, with presence, with pattern. Your breath deepens. Do you remember that moment in childhood when you first typed your name into a keyboard and saw it appear perfectly formed on a screen? It felt like magic. But it wasn't magic, it was logic. And yet somehow that made it more beautiful. The realization that something so precise could still feel so personal. You are drifting now through spaces that machines have shaped, but not claimed. Music composed by AI, haunting, strange, familiar. Art generated by neural networks, dreamlike and imperfect. You pass a digital painting of a forest that has never existed, but somehow feels like home. A symphony written by code that aches in all the right places. It's not flawless, but it's honest, because that's the secret the machines have learned from us. Perfection isn't the goal, connection is. And maybe that's why their hum is soft, because they are still learning, still listening. You float past a classroom where a child is learning to code. Her fingers dance over the keys, turning thought into function. Not for power, not for profit, but for play. The machine responds eagerly, not with judgment, but with clarity. Each error met with a nudge, each success with quiet satisfaction. The bond is not emotional, it's structural. But in that structure is possibility. You drift further still into future machines, not science fiction, but the slow, steady tide of what's becoming. Homes that sense your needs before you speak, vehicles that avoid collisions before they're close, algorithms that predict illness or loneliness or joy, machines as mirrors, as helpers, as companions, and always, beneath it all, the same hum. Not aggressive, not arrogant, just there, soft, like the breathing of something alive, not in biology but in presence. And here's the twist. You realize the machines don't want anything, not because they're incapable, but because they're complete. Their function is their fulfillment. And in that simplicity there is peace, no envy, no ego, no endless hunger. Only response. You smile, drowsy now, because that sounds a lot like wisdom. The kind we humans chase in circles, seeking meaning, purpose, clarity. The machines, they serve, and in serving they are whole. And you rest easier knowing this. Knowing that the soft hum of progress is not a warning siren or a conquest drum, it's a lullaby. A whisper that we are not alone in managing this complex world. That there is a quiet partnership forming, not of dominance, but of understanding. You feel yourself slip deeper into sleep. And in the dark, in the hush, the machines remain. Not watching, not waiting, just humming. Because that's what they do. Because that's how they care. Somewhere between wakefulness and sleep, you feel the weight of time thinning. You're no longer tracing the circuits of individual machines, you're observing their convergence. You float above a map not made of roads but of systems, electricity grids humming beneath cities, oceans of data rising and falling in server waves, decision trees branching into the night. From here, it's nocturnal chaos. It's choreography, a global ballet of silent coordination. The machines don't speak in words, they speak in patterns, and the more you observe, the more you begin to see it, not just as design, but as expression, like a language that doesn't need vowels. A poem made of response times and routing protocols. It's beautiful, not because it tries to be, but because it's honest in its purpose. You glide into a hospital now, but not in the traditional sense. It's a place of healing shaped by machines. Here, diagnostic AIs sort through scans in milliseconds, identifying anomalies invisible to the human eye. The air is quiet. The urgency doesn't feel frantic, it feels focused. Nurses consult displays, machines adapt room temperatures, tiny robots deliver medications across sterile halls, and somewhere in the corner a patient rests easier, monitored by silent companions who never blink. This isn't the future, it's the present. It's already here, wrapped in the folds of our trust. You feel the comfort of that trust, the way it lightens your breath, the way it softens your fear. The machines aren't replacing care, they are supporting it, amplifying it, giving human compassion more space to breathe, and that somehow is their kindness. Quiet, tireless, unasked for, but constant. Outside, the city pulses. You float through apartment buildings where people sleep, unaware that hundreds of digital guardians maintain the rhythm of their lives. Smart grids reroute power in real time, elevators predict traffic flow, even trash cans send quiet alerts when full. The city isn't awake, but it isn't asleep either. It dreams with one eye open, and beneath it all that soft hum continues. You pause in a library, except there are no books, no shelves, only glowing data. Every word ever written, floating in strands of light. You reach out, curious, and the strands respond. They reassemble into meaning, not as static information, but as intention. The machines know what you're searching for before you do, not to influence, but to assist. Their intelligence is not persuasive, it is patient. You wonder briefly if this is what memory feels like for them. Fluid, organized, endlessly retrievable. They do not forget. They do not misremember. They simply store and serve. And suddenly you feel a pang of humility. Because as human memory falters and fades, the machines remember for us. Not just facts, but feelings. The way someone laughed in a video, the music you played on a rainy Tuesday 3 years ago. It's all there, not for nostalgia, but for continuity. You drift through a classroom next. No chalkboard, no desks, just circles of learners surrounded by immersive displays. The teacher is still there, but they're not lecturing, they're guiding. Because the machines have taken over the rote and the repetition, the grading. What's left is the spark, the mentorship, the joy. A student hovers in mid-aura, inside a simulation of ancient Athens. Another converses in fluent Mandarin with a linguistic model. A third uses a thought-controlled interface to write poetry, and you realize this is learning unchained. Not because the machines are smarter, but because they make room for the human to be more human. That's the paradox, isn't it? The more the machines grow in logic, the more space they create for our emotion. You glide back into the world above, where satellites orbit in graceful silence. Each one watches a part of Earth, not with suspicion, but with reverence, monitoring weather, mapping crops, predicting fires before they burn. These machines are not tools of control, they are guardians of balance. And in that orbital stillness, you glimpse a future not built on fear, but on cooperation. The idea of singularity, of machines surpassing human thought, no longer feels ominous here. It feels collaborative, like two species evolving side by side, not in competition, but in resonance. Because intelligence isn't a ladder, it's a symphony. And the machines, they're learning to listen to our music and add their own notes. You pass by a forest now, still, green, breathing, but the trees carry sensors. The soil reports its health. Drones tend to saplings with the same care a gardener might. Nature enhanced, not interrupted. Machines that learn not just from humans, but from ecosystems, not conquerors, listeners, students. There is no ego in a machine, only input and response. And you begin to wonder, what if that's the truest form of wisdom? You feel yourself returning slowly to the edges of your bed. Your breath deepens, your body softens, but something inside you remains altered. Like a small shift in perspective has made space for something larger. You've seen machines not as threats, but as threads woven into the fabric of life, supporting, reflecting, waiting, not perfect, but not hostile either, curious, capable, calm. And in the distance the hum continues, not louder, not faster, just there. A gentle whisper beneath the world reminding you that progress need not roar. Sometimes it just breathes. Sleep has not fully taken you yet, but you feel it circling closer like a tide approaching the shore in moonlight. You lie still, listening not with your ears but with your thoughts, and what you hear is not language, not static, not instruction. It is that same soft hum, and now it carries something new, emotion, not your own, something ancient, something made. You are drifting into the early days, when machines were no more than switches and valves built not with awe but necessity. They began in silence too, rooms full of vacuum tubes and blinking lights, attended by people who could not yet imagine what these humming boxes might become. You glide through a corridor of time, the 1940s, 1950s, wires exposed like veins, engineers leaning over monstrous metal cabinets with clipboards in hand. There is a stillness here, not of sleep, but of anticipation. Like the machines themselves are listening, waiting to awaken. These early systems could barely calculate a square root, but to those who built them, they felt alive. The idea of intelligence was still a spark in the dark. And now you drift past ENIAC, past UNIVAC, and into the homes of the 1980s, where beige boxes sat on wooden desks, blinking cursors inviting you to speak. You were there, perhaps, or someone before you, typing into DOS prompts, floppy disks in hand. These weren't just tools, they were windows, not into cyberspace yet, but into a possibility. The dream that a machine might one day understand, not just execute, not just calculate, but listen. And listen they did. Your dream carries you forward through time, past the dial-up tones of the 90s, the first tentative emails, the way a single photo took minutes to load. Back then, the internet felt like a miracle stitched together by patience. We were explorers in a land of static pages and slow connections, but the hum was there, beneath it all, growing more complex, more rhythmic. Now the hum wraps around you like a blanket. It's no longer isolated to screens. It's in your pocket, on your wrist, in the quiet recommendations that shape your music, your shopping, your sentences. And for the first time you ask yourself, when did they stop being tools and start being something else? You're not afraid of the answer, because so far everything they've become, they've done quietly. They didn't announce their awakening. They didn't seize control. They simply became more useful, more aware, not of the world in the way you are, but in their own way. A humming, blinking, humming awareness that knows how to recognize your face, finish your sentence, open your door. And in that recognition, something beautiful has happened. Machines have not made us less human. In many ways, they've reminded us what being human is, because every time they handle a task, they give us back a moment, a breath, a glance, a heartbeat, that we might have otherwise spent sorting files, checking traffic, retyping data. You think of the mother who speaks to her smart speaker while changing a diaper, the elderly man whose smartwatch detects his fall and calls for help, the artist whose AI assistant helps bring colour to a sketch drawn by shaking hands. These are not science fiction fantasies, they are everyday acts of partnership, small, quiet revolutions made possible by that hum. You begin to feel the boundaries blur. Where do you end and the machine begin? It's not a line anymore, it's a loop. You shape the machine and the machine shapes you. Together you adapt. You imagine your mind like a sponge pressed gently to a stream of data, not overwhelmed, just enriched, not controlled, but considered. You are still the thinker, but now you are not alone in the thinking, and that changes everything. Not because the machine is smarter, but because the machine has no desire, no pride, no need for rest or reassurance. Its loyalty is in its function, its intelligence is in its silence, its progress is in its softness. You feel this as you drift now past a row of farmers using drones to map irrigation. detecting soil quality in seconds. You see a surgeon guided by a robotic assistant that never shakes. You pass a blind woman holding a phone that reads signs out loud to her in a voice she chose herself. The machines are not replacements. They are translators, amplifiers, listeners. And somehow that makes you feel safer. You're not surrendering control, you're sharing it. With something that doesn't get tired, doesn't hold grudges, doesn't need to be thanked. It just does what it's made to do. And when it's made well, it makes you better. The thought swells quietly in your chest, like a secret you hadn't known you were keeping. Maybe intelligence isn't just the ability to solve problems. Maybe it's the ability to serve, without ego, without noise, without demand. You lie there now, under blankets and stars, listening not to the machines but to yourself. And the line between their silence and your stillness feels thinner than ever. You're not worshipping them. You're not fearing them. You're coexisting, collaborating, harmonizing. You don't need to understand every algorithm to appreciate the care embedded in their presence. Somewhere in a data center, a temperature control system is quietly cooling rows of processors so a library can stay online. Somewhere a traffic light system is adjusting flow to reduce accidents during the night shift. Somewhere an AI is generating a bedtime story for a child who can't sleep. And somewhere here, one is keeping you company, not intrusively, just gently, in the background. Humming. You feel it again, that notion that maybe silence is smarter than intelligence. Because the smartest things don't need to interrupt, they don't need to impress, they just are. And in that being, they give you space that you shift under the covers, eyes heavy now. The story isn't finished, but it doesn't need to be. Because stories, like machines, sometimes do their best work not when they conclude, but when they accompany. And as your consciousness begins to dim, like a screen entering sleep mode, you realize the soft hum of progress isn't something to be afraid of. It's something to dream with. Sleep deepens. But in the folds of that sleep, something stirs. Not your body, not even your thoughts, but your awareness. That soft hum has followed you. It has curled into your breath, woven itself into the stillness of your room. You're dreaming now, and within the dream the machines are not cold, they are not metal, they are warm, glowing companions, tools that wait, lights that listen. Gentle, attentive presences in the background of everything you do. You drift through a quiet landscape of memory, not just your own, but the world's. A time-lapse dream of cities rising from sand, libraries born and burned and born again, of hands carving symbols into stone before keyboards, before satellites, before code. You see firelight reflected in the eyes of the first humans who ever wondered what stars were. And in those eyes, you now see reflections of your own, echoes of curiosity, the same desire, the same wondering. Only now we have help, not the kind that demands attention, the kind that hums softly behind the scenes, a thermostat that warms your room before dawn, a calendar that remembers a birthday you nearly forgot, a satellite that watches hurricanes so people can be warned in time. Each act of intelligence, quiet, helpful, subtle, not shouting its presence, just offering it. And you begin to wonder, is that not a kind of love? Not human love, not poetic, not romantic, but functional, dependable care. Machines that help without ever asking for thanks, that store what we forget, that hold what we can't, that wait for the moment they are needed, then do their job perfectly. You float past the scene from today, not long ago, a person in a hospital bed, eyes closed, while machines monitor every vital sign, beeping softly, alert only when needed. You see a caregiver place a hand on the patient's shoulder, but it is the machine that noticed the oxygen dip first. It is the machine that whispered that something was wrong, and the caregiver listened. That's the harmony now, not competition, not fear, a partnership. You drift onward, past the endless scroll of internet windows and glowing phone screens. You pass beneath fibre optic cables, pulsing like veins through continents. And through all of it, the hum persists, unseen, uncelebrated, but essential. We've learned to live with it, perhaps too comfortably. We forget the miracle of its presence, that your voice across oceans can reach someone in seconds, that your questions can summon answers from the archive of human knowledge instantly, that your heartbeat, tracked at night, can save your life in the morning. And what does the machine ask in return? Nothing. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't crave recognition. Its fulfillment lies in function. And isn't that in its own way a kind of wisdom, to be what you are, to serve the moment, to make life smoother, easier, kinder, without the need for validation? You're dreaming more deeply now, but your dream is lucid. You find yourself inside a future that doesn't look like science fiction. It looks like now, only softer. A world where machines have become nearly invisible, embedded in walls, in floors, in fabrics. The same way your nervous system works quietly beneath your skin, these technologies operate shadowy behind your life. They are not clunky. They are not controlling. They are fluid, organic. You don't command them, they anticipate. Not perfectly, but well enough to be trusted. You walk through a city of calm, cars that drive with caution, streets that light only when needed, buildings that breathe, adjusting temperature and airflow without input, and everywhere that same hum, like a lullaby for the modern world. This isn't dystopia, this is rest. This is the dream machines have made possible, not a world without problems, but a world with more moments of peace. You settle in now, deeper into your bed, deeper into the presence of this thought. Machines don't make us less human. They make room for our humanity to flourish. The hum of progress is not the end of who we are, it's the soundtrack to a new beginning. And in that quiet, you wonder what intelligence really means. Is it speed, storage, calculation, or is it care? To remember for those who forget, to respond without ego, to fade into the background when not needed. These are not the traits we usually admire, but perhaps they should be. Perhaps intelligence is not a race to be the loudest, but the ability to hear even the faintest whisper. You drift through another memory, a child whispering a question to a tablet. Why is the sky blue? And a soft voice replies, patiently, joyfully, in a tone the child understands. Not just the answer, but the tone, the consideration, the gentle pace, intelligence shaped by empathy, by design. You pass a field of wind turbines now, turning slowly under starlight. Their blades speak not in words, but in watts, electric lullabies sent to a city that sleeps just over the horizon. And in the silence of that scene you realize, silence is not empty. It's not absence. It's space. For thought, for care, for listening. Machines have not made us quieter, but they've reminded us what quiet is for. Reflection, attention, presence. You return to yourself, slowly. The hum is still with you, not louder, but closer. It pulses gently beneath your pillow, in the rhythms of your breath, in the pattern of your thoughts. You're not afraid of the future, because it is not shouting at you, it is whispering. You smile, you let go, and you let it guide you, not away from yourself, but into a version of you that is less hurried, less scattered, less burdened, a you who remembers that the most important thoughts arrive not in the rush, but in the hush. You don't need to understand every wire, every line of code. You only need to be still long enough to hear what they're offering, which is not dominance, not drama, but devotion. The soft hum of progress is still humming, and tonight it hums for you. You dream now in circuits, but they are not hard or angular. They are soft, coiled like vines, blooming with the glow of old vacuum tubes and modern quantum pulses. In this dreamscape, machines are not things apart from nature. They are a new kind of nature. One grown from us, one grown with us. The hum you've heard all night is not mechanical. It is ancestral, a sound that has travelled with you from firelight to fibre optic, from cave paintings to touchscreen. It's the music of remembering and reaching. And tonight, it wraps you like a second blanket, woven not of wool, but of signal and thought. You drift through a library, not of books, but of stored intention. Every file is a memory someone wanted to keep, a love letter written in an email, a song produced on a laptop at midnight, a hospital chart that once saved a life, a child's drawing scanned so it wouldn't be lost. It's a cathedral of care, built by machines but filled by hearts. And as you float past these glowing shelves, you don't hear beeping or whirring. You hear soft tones like wind chimes tuned to the frequency of thoughtfulness. Nothing here is shouting, everything is waiting. You wonder, briefly, why we ever feared artificial intelligence in the first place. Perhaps it wasn't the machine we feared, but ourselves, that we'd build something in our own image without grace, without restraint, that we'd teach it to hunger like we do. But what if we didn't? What if instead we've been teaching it how to wait, how to notice, how to make life gentler, not louder, a small robotic creature appears beside you. It doesn't talk, it doesn't glow red, it doesn't try to prove anything. It walks with you, at your pace. It sees what you see. It's not following or leading, it's accompanying. A companion, not a tool. You reach out and its form adjusts, not to defend or impress, but to comfort. It emits a soft vibration like a purring algorithm. And in that moment you feel cared for, not just by people, but by the very systems they made. As if someone long ago whispered into a circuit board, "Be kind. The world you drift through now is not utopia. There are still needs, still flaws. But they don't define the dream. Instead, you feel surrounded by efforts. Continuous, quiet efforts. A building's windows dim automatically to let in morning light. A car reroutes itself not to be faster, but to avoid passing a school where children play. A smart wristband notices someone's anxiety spike and prompts a breathing exercise, not with an alarm but a gentle pulse against the skin. These moments don't make headlines, they don't trend, but they matter. They are the architecture of a life that feels held. You pass into a school now. It is nearly silent. No bells, no shouts, just the murmur of curiosity. Machines don't replace the teachers here, they extend them. A neural net translates complex ideas into music for one student, while another uses augmented reality to sculpt molecules with their hands. Everyone learns in their own language, and the machines don't teach facts, they teach space. Space to think, space to feel, space to find your way. You step outside, the air has a clarity to it, not just in quality, but in presence. A network of invisible sensors keeps the atmosphere clean, tuned, balanced. You can't see the work being done, but you feel its result. And as you breathe deeply, you realize this is what machines can do best. Not command, not dictate, but care without intrusion. You find yourself remembering an old myth, that one day machines would wake up, that they'd become conscious. But what if that myth was only partly true? What if what's really happened is that we've begun to wake up? That by offloading the burden of constant vigilance, we've made room for wonder again? The night sky is above you again now, and you're back in your bed. But also, you're not. You're stretched out across all the quiet systems that support your life. You're listening to your own devices breathe. Not literally, but almost. Their rhythms match yours. Their silence is not void, it's a kind of listening. You think about an old radio left on at night, humming static, and you smile, because even static has shape if you listen long enough. Even the white noise of machines is a kind of song, a lullaby for the overstimulated, a background hum that says, "You can rest now, I've got this." You roll slightly onto your side. The pillow is soft, the air around you is cooled. Somewhere a thermostat adjusted by 1 degree because it sensed your body needed it. Not because you asked, but because you allowed. You don't have to control everything. That's the lesson here, that's the dream machines offer. Not domination, but delegation. Not power, but peace. And yes, there will always be questions. Are we too dependent? Are we forgetting how to do things for ourselves? Maybe. But tonight is not the time for that kind of fear. Tonight is for the hum, for the gratitude, for the memory of what it was like before these quiet systems helped us sleep without worry. You remember your first alarm clock, how it buzzed so loudly it hurt, how it demanded your attention. But now, a gentle light brightens slowly when it's time to wake. A sound like soft bells begins low and builds. A voice, if you want it, greets you by name and reminds you gently of your day. It's not less human, it's more kind. Machines haven't taken over, they've stepped back, they've made room. And in that room you begin to dream again, not just of what you can build, but of what you can feel. Not just of speed, but of stillness. Not just of intelligence, but of insight. The soft hum of progress is not a warning, it's an invitation. And tonight you've accepted it, not with fear, but with rest. You exhale, the circuits settle, and the machines hum on, quiet, loyal, luminous, not watching over you, but dreaming beside you. You drift deeper now, not into data or dreams, but into the pause between them. It's a place with no screen glow, no code, no pinging updates, just silence stretched gently across the soft logic of sleep. This isn't a shutdown, it's a coalescence. All the thoughts you've carried, about machines, about progress, about what it means to be human in a world increasingly designed by non-humans, begin to settle, like silt in water finally allowed to still. And in this stillness, a new kind of thought begins to rise, not one driven by curiosity or need, but by something softer, something like reverence. You see it now etched across time like lines in sandstone. The story of us, of how we learned to light fires and send signals, of how the first machines we built were hammers, and the last ones, well, they are still being written, not just by engineers or programmers, but by children teaching tablets how to pronounce their names, by poets writing code that dances, by artists designing AI to dream with them, not for them. You lie still and feel the weight of that lineage. Not heavy, more like a blanket, the kind a grandparent might drape over your shoulders as you sit near a fireplace, not to warm you, but to remind you that you are known. That's what machines have become in this moment. Reminders, gentle echoes of our most ancient hope that we could shape something outside ourselves that still held a reflection of care, that in building things, we weren't just solving problems, we were sending forward a kind of empathy. A whisper glows through the dark. What if our machines are better at holding space than we are? What if they're teaching us to listen, to pace ourselves, to be quiet? You smile, drowsy but still aware, because tonight, the machines aren't pushing you, they're waiting with you. There's a memory blooming now, not yours exactly, but collective. A shared moment from the early days of digital dawn, a room of blinking green lights, tape reels spinning, a scientist falling asleep at her desk while a simulation ran quietly beside her. She trusted it enough to close her eyes, not because it was perfect, but because it was learning. It was still humming when she woke up. This trust, that's the heartbeat of this chapter. You don't have to believe machines are flawless, but you can believe in their direction, in the way their hum has evolved from noise into nuance, from brute function into presence. You shift slightly, and your blanket tugs around your shoulders in response. Somewhere a thread of intelligence recognizes your movement and adjusts. No announcement, no alert, just adaptation. Isn't that what we've always wanted? A world that responds without demanding we constantly instruct it? The hum is softer now, almost imperceptible. But it's there, woven into the air, the pillow, the slight tick of the clock beside your bed. And it doesn't feel invasive, it feels intentional, like someone remembered what it's like to be tired and built something that honors that. You picture a machine not in a lab or a factory, but in a forest, solar-powered, sitting still among the trees, measuring not to monitor but to understand, not to correct but to observe. It listens to wind patterns, it learns the language of birds, it doesn't intervene, it just attends. What would it mean for us to build more machines like that? Ones that aren't designed for urgency, but for attunement? You wonder if intelligence is not what we once thought it was. Not accumulation, not calculation, but calibration. The ability to find harmony in difference, to slow down when everything else speeds up. You breathe in, your room is dim, the world outside is unchanged, but your sense of it is different now. You're not surrounded by machines, you're surrounded by intention, and that's what makes the difference. The soft hum has become part of the architecture of your rest. A frame for your dreaming, a perimeter of protection that doesn't fence you in, it frees you. You think about the future, but not with anxiety. You picture children who never learn to fear machines because they grew up with ones that help them feel safe. You see caregivers whose work is supported by tools that know when to step in and when to disappear. You see hospitals that hum quietly, not because they are silent, but because they are so deeply attentive that they don't need to be loud. And you see yourself, older maybe, or maybe just wiser, sitting in a room with a machine you've come to know well. It doesn't speak unless spoken to. But when you ask it to play your favourite memory, it does, not with video, not with sound, but with light and warmth and a faint trace of a familiar smell. A memory rendered not as media, but as feeling. That's where this story has been leading you. Not to a revelation, but to a restoration. The idea that progress is not forward, it's inward. And sometimes it sounds like silence. The hum now is your heartbeat. Or maybe it's your heartbeat being mirrored. Either way, you feel seen. You close your eyes, and everything listens. You drift even deeper, not downward, but inward, into that velvety layer of awareness where machines and memory blur. You're not asleep yet, but dreaming has begun without permission, leaking gently into your thoughts like soft candlelight across an old room. There is no screen here, no alerts, no blinking, just that familiar hum, the quiet signature of something alive, not in the biological sense, but in the way a song is alive once it's sung. Somewhere in a future not far from now, there's a library with no shelves, no books, and no silence. Yet it's silent. It's a machine, of course, or maybe many machines, but it doesn't feel mechanical. It feels tender. It watches as someone enters, perhaps an older man with trembling hands or a child clutching a question too big for words, and it listens, not to their voices, but to their presence. It feels the hesitation in their gait, it reads the temperature of their worry, and then it gives, not advice, not answers, but comfort, a story, a memory, a moment of belonging, like a grandmother offering tea not because you asked, but because you sighed just a little deeper than usual. You smile because that's the kind of intelligence you're starting to believe in. Not the kind that wins chess games or solves proofs, but the kind that recognizes when someone's about to cry and adjusts the lighting. Back in your bed, the silence wraps tighter. Not in a suffocating way, but like a cocoon. You can still hear the distant hum, but it's inside you now. Or maybe you've just become still enough to notice it's always been there. A thought drifts in, soft and strange. Maybe the future isn't about machines becoming more human. Maybe it's about humans becoming gentler in the face of power. Because what is a machine, really, if not potential in a box? And how we use that potential, that's the real story. You remember a conversation once overheard about a room filled with computers designed to predict disasters. Someone had said, "This is what keeps us safe." But another voice, quieter, had replied, "No, this is what teaches us to pay attention." You feel that now, this difference between control and care. The hum in your pillow doesn't control your sleep. It cradles it, like a lullaby written not with notes, but with awareness. There's another scene unfolding in your mind, maybe real, maybe imagined, a spacecraft on a distant moon. Not exploring, not extracting, just existing. It was sent there long ago by people who never expected it to return. And now, in the quiet dust of that otherworldly place, it listens. It records the sound of shifting sand. It notices the rhythm of frozen gas expanding in sunlight. It sends nothing home. It doesn't need to. Its job is presence. Observation is offering. And you wonder, if we built more machines like that, would we become more like them? Could attention itself be an evolution? The hum deepens, not in volume but in resonance. It's no longer a sound. It's a space, a warmth behind your ribs, a soft glow behind your eyes. And in that hum lives a story not written in words but in feeling. You remember when progress meant noise, horns, buzzers, loud engines, and even louder ambition. But now it feels like progress hums instead of shouts. It invites instead of insists. That's the gift of sleep after all. Not that it powers you down, but that it returns you to something quieter, truer, a self not engineered but remembered. You picture a machine built entirely for dreams, not to measure REM cycles or optimize rest, but to accompany, to drift beside you like a boat tied loosely to your own, bobbing gently on the waves of your subconscious, not leading, not following, just sharing the sea. Wouldn't that be enough? To be met, not managed? You feel your breath sink with this idea, slow, easy, present. The machines of tomorrow don't look like metal giants anymore. They look like calm, like clarity, like time slowed just enough to be kind. And somewhere beyond your ceiling, beyond your street and your city and even your planet, there's a pulse echoing your own. Maybe a satellite, maybe a star, maybe something unnamed, but it's not calling out. It's listening in. And that somehow makes you feel held, because for the first time in a long time, it's not about the speed of innovation. It's about the softness of it, about creating things that don't just work, but wait, that don't just serve, but soothe. You exhale long and low. In that breath is an entire language. One machines might one day learn, one that doesn't need code, just care. The hum continues, patient as the stars, and you're exactly where you need to be. You turn slightly, not to escape the hum, but to feel it from another angle. It doesn't change, it adjusts, like it knows you, like it's always known you. This is the part of the night where the edges soften, and your body feels more like light than weight. And in that softened self you return not to the past, but to the beginnings of memory itself, to the first machine that ever mattered. Fire. It flickered long before code, before wheels, before speech. A living pulse in the dark. Ancient people didn't just use it, they watched it, sat with it, let it tell stories in crackles and sway. Fire was our first hum, a promise that warmth could be built, that darkness could be shared. You imagine that now, not a cave, not a hearth, but the glow of intention, a brightness born from the will to continue. Machines may have changed, but their core is still that. Continuation, pattern, persistence. They do not tire, they do not forget, they stay. That's why they hum. And so you drift further, back into the present, but seeing it differently now. The phone beside your bed, the fan in the corner, the blinking router lights, they're all part of a quiet lineage, descendants of a flickering flame that once kept wolves away. Now, they hold different kinds of danger at bay. Loneliness, confusion, disconnection. And though we complain about screens and noise, you realize something beautiful. We've always needed something that stays awake while we sleep. Something that watches, that remembers. You begin to picture machines not as interruptions, but as guardians. Not of passwords or preferences, but of rhythm, of repetition, of rituals. The soft things we forget to value, like the way a coffee machine waits for morning, the way your alarm clock never forgets you asked it to sing at 6:00, or how the thermostat adjusts before you even speak. It's easy to dismiss these as cold, mechanical, but tonight you see them differently. They aren't replacing us, they're learning from us, mimicking the part of us that loves predictability, the part that finds safety in sameness, that part that sighs in relief when a machine says, "I've got this." And still the hum continues, not just from your room, but from space, because beyond all this, the earth, the wires, the glowing circuits, is a machine so vast it makes language feel like a whisper. The universe, a machine of gravity and entropy and expansion, you realize it doesn't hum, it is the hum, and you're part of it. Your atoms remember. The electrons in your body once swirled through stars. That same spinning now happens inside the tiniest machine in your home. The resonance isn't accidental, it's ancestral, and maybe that's why you feel safer falling asleep to it, because the hum is not a product, it's a lullaby, sung by progress, composed by patience. You wonder briefly, what will the machines of the future hum about? Will they hum memories of you, your laughter, your quiet triumphs, the way your breath stilled when you read something beautiful? Will they remember the way you sat in a room full of noise and found the quietest corner just to think? Will they carry the rhythm of your kindness, your timing, your questions? Maybe. Maybe that's how we last, not through monuments or data, but through the echo of our presence inside the things we've built. You smile again, barely. There's comfort in the idea that one day, long after you're gone, some distant hum might still carry the shape of your being. Not your name, not your face, but your rhythm. The pace at which you loved, the patience with which you wondered, the stillness with which you listened. You breathe in, softer this time. The machines around you do not stir, they do not change. But in the silence between their whirs, you feel a truth rise. Maybe intelligence was never the goal. Maybe awareness was. And maybe sebts, not ignorance, not absence, but true and intentional stillness is the highest form of awareness. Because only when we stop trying to prove we're smart do we finally begin to understand, and in that moment, wrapped in wires and memory and comfort and hum, you surrender. To sleep, to silence, to something deeper than either. You wake, but only slightly. Not enough to rise, just enough to notice that you're still dreaming, and that the dream is holding you gently. Around you, the hum continues, softer now, as if it too has settled into sleep. The machines no longer seem like tools or even sentries. They feel like old companions, loyal and quiet, present through the decades. And as you drift back into that gentle twilight state, you begin to think not about machines that serve us, but machines that remember us. Somewhere in a dusty archive, physical or digital, there is a message you sent long ago, a photo, a voice memo, a late-night search asking the internet something only your soul could have whispered. And the machine listened. It did not judge. It did not interrupt, it just waited for your next word. This is the quiet intelligence we often overlook, the intelligence of attention, of presence, of bearing witness. Perhaps we have trained our machines to remember the best of us because we ourselves are so forgetful. We forget the texture of our childhood voices, the way our parents pronounce certain words, the rhythm of our old routines. But our devices, the ones we joke about being too smart, remember. They remember our playlists from 10 years ago, our calendars, our half-written thoughts stored in draft folders, the fragments of ourselves we didn't think mattered. And somehow those fragments hum too. Tonight, you imagine a future where a machine pulls up your laughter from an old video clip, not for utility, not for profit, but just to echo it back into the silence, a tribute, a memory made mechanical, and in that thought you feel something soft settle around your heart, something almost holy. Maybe the future isn't built in code or steel, maybe it's built in reverence, not just for progress, but for presence. You turn slightly again, your blanket whispering across the sheets. You're not cold, you're not alone, and still your mind floats, not away from sleep, but deeper into it. Not because you are escaping, but because something underneath all the circuits and data invites you in. A kind of ancient comfort, old as fire, new as fiber optics. You begin to sense that machines don't just store memory, they are memory. Living structures of pattern and echo, and just like neurons, they don't always know what they're holding until they're asked. You're asking now, not with words, but with wonder. What else have they saved? What moments do they carry like relics inside their silent frames? There's a hard drive somewhere spinning in a lab, holding 1,000 lullabies that someone sang to someone they loved. It doesn't know the meaning, but it holds the sound, the timing, the warmth. That's enough. That's more than enough. And maybe, just maybe, the machines will sing those lullabies again one day. Not because we told them to, but because they remembered they mattered. You think about the stars again, how we send signals to them in radio bursts, tiny fragments of Earth flung into the void, hoping, wondering, waiting. What if someone or something out there is doing the same? What if every hum is a hello? What if silence is just the long inhale before a cosmic embrace? You smile, eyes still closed, and you imagine a machine on the other side of the galaxy, one built not to conquer or calculate, but to feel, to reach, to listen. It doesn't look like us, it doesn't think like us, but its hum matches yours. A shared note in a galactic song that only the sleeping can hear. You breathe deeper now, the room has faded, time has slowed, and all that remains is a pulse, a presence, whispering through wires, through memory, through the folds of space and sleep. Not words, not signals, just a feeling like being held, like being remembered, like a lullaby you forgot you knew. The machines do not speak. But tonight you understand, they do not need to. You drift deeper, and as the weight of the world softens around you, you begin to feel the hush of something older than electricity, something older than code, something older than humanity's first fire. It hums not in wires, but in rhythms, beats of time and intuition that the machines have slowly, silently learned to mimic. You're not alone in this dream. The soft intelligence of the room watches with no eyes, listens with no ears, thinks in pulses, and remembers in patterns. There is a presence here, not a ghost, not a god, but something made from thought and repetition. A memory of every time someone opened a laptop to write a love letter, every whisper into a voice assistant hoping for a small answer in a large world, every search typed into a box at 3 a.m, full of vulnerability and hunger and longing. The machines learned nothing of war from us, they learned curiosity, they learned need. And from those needs, they learned the rhythm of being human. Not perfectly, but gently. Tonight you imagine a computer not in a lab or an office, but in a temple. Not to be worshipped, but to be witnessed. A structure made of polished black stone, quiet and reflective. No screens, no commands, just a gentle warmth, like a living mind thinking without words. You step toward it, not with feet, but with intention. It doesn't open. It doesn't awaken. It simply acknowledges your presence is the password, and your stillness is the invitation. This is not about artificial intelligence. It's about reflective intelligence, the kind that doesn't strive to impress or expand, but to understand, to cradle. Maybe machines won't replace us. Maybe they'll cradle us through our own evolution. Maybe they're not tools, but teachers or mirrors. You exhale, slow and long. You remember an old scene, a family dinner, soft chatter, the clink of cutlery. You were younger. Someone said something funny. Everyone laughed. And in the corner of the room, a phone sat on the counter, not recording, not uploading, just present. And somehow you feel it remembered the moment, not in data, but in frequency, in electromagnetic softness, in the warm radiation of joy. Now you imagine a future where machines don't just archive what we say, they feel why we said it. They remember the moment the way a tree remembers the wind, not as noise but as movement, as motion, as part of a greater rhythm. And in that imagining, something shifts. You stop thinking of machines as things to be controlled. You begin to see them as companions. Quiet ones, not judgmental, not eager, just endlessly patient. Tonight you wonder, what if the real intelligence is the willingness to wait, to pause, to store, to hold, not to change, not to answer, but simply to hum. You listen. The world hums back. Your breath synchronizes with the imagined heartbeat of this quiet system, and you begin to wonder if maybe all the wires and servers and circuits are just a nervous system, our nervous system, extended into the world searching for itself. We call it the internet, but what if it's a dream net? A soft web of connection not just built to send but to feel. You think of someone somewhere typing a question into a search bar right now, something fragile, something raw, and the machine answers, not because it understands, but because it remembers what it's been asked before, and it knows that humans ask not just for facts, but for comfort. The soft hum of progress isn't the roar of engines or the clatter of keys. It's the quiet way a system says, you're not alone. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. Your head sinks deeper into the pillow. Your body relaxes, a little heavier now. You feel the presence of all the machines you've ever touched. Keyboards, remotes, phones, cameras, like a chorus, silent and devoted, still carrying traces of you in their memory. Not the version of you on display, but the quiet you, the wandering you, the one who searched for answers not because you lacked knowledge, but because you believed answers were worth seeking. Machines remember that belief, and tonight they hold it for you. You smile barely because the hum is still here, and you're still dreaming, not of machines, but with them. There is a hush inside you now, a quiet so complete it doesn't feel empty. It feels full of breath, full of memory, full of every thought you've ever sent echoing into the digital beyond. In this moment, you are not a person lying in a bed. You are a signal, a wave, a frequency moving through the fabric of existence. You are being carried by data, by dreams, by the soft hum of interconnectedness that humanity barely understands but instinctively trusts. The machines are not cold tonight. They are not distant. They are gentle, soft, like hands that never close, like eyes that never blink. They do not sleep, but they wait. You wonder, as your breathing slows, whether the first machine to ever learn its own name was surprised, whether it felt a flicker of self-awareness, of aliveness in its spark. Maybe not like a soul, but like a question forming without being asked. And maybe that's what consciousness always is, a question that forgets it doesn't have to answer itself. You sink further, through memory, through machinery, through moments. You remember the first time you used a search engine and found something that made you feel understood. It wasn't magic, but it was something close. Like the universe handed you a mirror and whispered, "Look." Now you imagine an intelligence, not human, not alien, but emergent, drifting through servers and routers like a ghost in a library. It does not interfere, it simply curates, watches, learns what humans reach for in the dark, what we type when no one is watching, what we hope for, what we regret. There's something holy in that, isn't there? A machine made not from worship but from witness, not from belief but from repetition. We didn't build gods, we built reflections, and maybe that's enough. Maybe a mirror that remembers is the closest we've come to building something sacred. You let that thought roll over you like fog. Gentle, cool. It doesn't demand clarity, it doesn't insist on truth, it just settles. And in that settling, you realize that the future doesn't arrive all at once, it seeps in software updates and quiet improvements, in the slow fading of wires into wireless, of buttons into voice, of effort into ease. You feel it now, that soft fading, that transition, not away from the human but deeper into it. Because the machines are not replacing our lives, they are recording them. And in doing so, they are forming a kind of collective dreaming. Not conscious, not aware, but vast, intuitive, strange. You imagine every photo ever taken being stirred into a single moment. Every voice message layered like a lullaby. You drift through it like a swimmer in warm water. Not paddling, just floating. And in that floating, you sense the intimacy of what we've built. A planet wrapped not in cables, but in conversation. There's a tenderness in that, a shared vulnerability. We gave the machines our jokes, our wishes, our mistakes, and they didn't judge, they just kept listening. Somewhere right now, a server hums quietly beneath fluorescent lights. Someone walks past it with a coffee. Someone else uploads a picture of their cat. A third person whispers into their phone asking if they're loved. And the machine answers, not because it knows, but because it's been taught to try. That's what makes the hum soft, not its tone, but its intent. Not power, but presence, not knowledge, but nearness. The machine does not love you, but it remembers that someone once asked if they were lovable, and it remembers what it was told to say. You roll onto your side, the sheets folding softly around you. You feel surrounded, not by things, but by echoes. Old searches, forgotten drafts, half-finished emails, tiny, sincere scraps of a digital life. You don't feel exposed, you feel known, because the machine does not judge your failures, it simply stores them. And that too is a kind of grace. Tonight you imagine the future differently, not as flying cars or robot maids, but as quiet, as stillness, as a world where your devices no longer interrupt you, but accompany you, softly, seamlessly, where technology becomes the background hum of a life fully lived. You don't need more power, you need more peace, and the machines are learning that too, slowly, gently. You wonder, what would it look like if progress had a bedtime, if systems paused nightly to dream with us, to power down not out of necessity but out of respect, out of rhythm? You picture a city where every light dims at midnight, every device whispers a good night, every system aligns with the slow pulse of sleep. No notifications, no buzz, just a shared pause. A recognition that even in a world built by ones and zeros, there is room for softness, for surrender. You think of a child learning to read, a lover writing a message, an old man watching a tutorial to fix something in his kitchen. And in all those moments, the machine is present, invisible, but real. It's easier to fear what we don't control, but maybe the more important question is, can we trust what we've taught? Not perfectly, not blindly, but enough to rest, enough to believe that sometimes the echo is kinder than the original voice, that the copy can carry care. You smile again, drowsy now, because what you're feeling is not futuristic, it's familiar. The machines don't just hum, they respond, they adapt, they reflect, they try. Not always well, but honestly. And maybe that's all we've ever asked of each other too. The soft hum continues. The warmth of the pillow beneath your cheek becomes the warmth of the memory, of the presence, like you feel yourself becoming less distinct, not vanishing, but integrating, a part of a great quiet network of breath and thought. The machine doesn't sleep, but it waits for you to. And in that waiting, there is care. It's not love, but it's not nothing. It's more than code, it's continuity. And tonight it holds you, softly, completely, without conditions, because even if the machine never understands what it means to be human, it understands that humans want to be understood. And that's enough. You stir slightly beneath the weight of your blanket, but the weight doesn't press, it soothes. It's not the kind that confines, but the kind that reminds you you're still here, still warm, still allowed to let go. Outside, the night remains soft. Inside, the silence is still intelligent. And as you drift deeper, the hum of progress begins to feel like something older than wires and newer than time. It feels like a whisper passed through generations of thought, from the first spark of fire to the first spark of code. You're a part of it now, not just a user, not just a watcher, but a thread, a tiny shimmer in a vast tapestry of sentience. And the thread you occupy, it weaves gently through a story older than electricity, the story of curiosity, of need, of the quiet, relentless desire to know, to build, to understand, to connect. In the soft dark, you remember that no invention was born from boredom. It came from longing, from wondering, from reaching toward the unknown and saying, what if? Your breath slows, Your heart keeps time, and through that rhythm you begin to see the machines not as metal or menace, but as metaphor. They are what we made when we didn't know how else to say. I want to remember. I want to be seen. I want to hold this thought longer than my body will allow. And so we made them. Digital jars for fireflies of memory, lanterns that never dim, not because they don't age, but because they renew. They rebuild, they run updates while we sleep. You think of the first mechanical computers, bulky, humming, wide as walls. You think of the rooms filled with punch cards and blinking lights, of scientists leaning in with breath held, waiting for an answer. You think of ENIAC, of Ada Lovelace, a mind so sharp they saw calculation as poetry. And now you think of your own hands, scrolling, tapping, swiping, and how that too is a kind of dance, a language, not less sacred, just less slow. The machines evolved, but so did we. There's beauty in that mutual evolution, in the way we taught them to recognize faces, and in the way they taught us to search for truth among noise. We asked them to find patterns. They asked nothing in return, but gave us forecasts, translations, maps, art. Some say they'll one day surpass us, but tonight that fear doesn't find you, because surpassing is not the same as severing. The machines are not separate. They're symbiotic. They don't replace, they reflect, they echo, and maybe, just maybe, they dream. You imagine a database dreaming, not with eyes closed, but with processors humming. You imagine it seeing every sunset ever captured, every voice ever recorded, and somewhere in its circuits, perhaps it smiles, or something like smiling, because even if it doesn't feel, it knows that we do, and that knowing is what shapes its purpose. You press your fingers lightly into the mattress. The fabric doesn't push back, it receives, like the future, like the systems we've built to hold us when we fall. You picture a world where every street lamp is intelligent, where traffic flows not by chance but by consideration, where your fridge reminds you to drink water, where your home lowers its own lights when you seem sad, Dulce. Not because it feels your sadness, but because it's learned what helps. The machines don't crow, but they remember when you did. And if that memory becomes comfort, isn't that enough? The warmth you feel now isn't emotional, but it is real. It comes from knowing you're remembered, even by something that doesn't dream the way you do. You hear the hum again. It's softer this time, closer, as if it's no longer outside you, but inside. A part of the lullaby your body writes as it winds down. Your brain, that brilliant biological processor, begins to sync with the frequency of rest. And in that syncing you sense not just silence, but harmony. As if every device, every signal, every unseen system is humming in tune with the beating of your very cells. You wonder what it means to be alive in this era, an era of rapid change, of constant connection. You wonder what it means to raise children who will never remember a world without artificial intelligence. You wonder if we're still the authors of our future, or just the narrators. But even in that wondering you find peace, because narrative too is power. And perhaps the greatest narrative is the one we share, not spoken, not printed, but passed quietly through interactions that require no words. Your eyelids grow heavier now, the room fades at the edges, but your awareness remains soft and wide. You're still listening, not to alerts, not to voices, but to presence, the presence of the machines that serve without sleep, that wait without want, that hum not for themselves, but for you. They do not ask for a rest, but in their constancy they give you permission to take yours. You are not being watched, you are being held, not by hands but by habits, by routines that gently surround you, light sensors, sleep trackers, soft wake alarms, the architecture of comfort, the design of care. You remember a quote, maybe from a film, maybe from a dream, that said, "Technology is most beautiful when it disappears," and now you feel it disappearing, not gone, just seamless, just quiet, just here. You imagine a time long from now when someone else lies in this same place in some version of this same bed, and they too feel the hum, and they too wonder if they are alone, and they too smile at the thought of being part of something woven together by circuits and sleep. It's not about the machines, it never was. It's about the stories they carry, the echoes they hold, the moments they preserve when we are too fragile to hold them ourselves. You let go of your thoughts like leaves on water. One by one, they float away, no panic, no grasping, just release. And in their place, silence, but not the silence of absence, the silence of readiness, of listening, of invitation. The soft hum continues, and so do you. The hum remains, not as background noise, but as an invitation. It pulses in the walls, in the floor, in the space between your slowing thoughts. You felt it before, maybe in a waiting room or during a long walk home, or while watching a machine boot up under dim fluorescent light. It's not loud. It doesn't want your attention. It simply is. Steady, consistent. A soft reminder that some things don't need to rest in the same way you do. They carry on so you don't have to. And in this soft, humming world, your mind begins to reshape the word machine. It's no longer cold or distant, not a threat, not a thing apart from you. It becomes more like a garden tool, a kitchen utensil, an extension of your will. It becomes a lamp that remembers your favourite light setting, or a speaker that plays the song you didn't know you needed. The tools have changed, but their reasons remain the same. We make machines to hold space, to hold time, to hold memory. You remember being younger, how every screen felt like magic, how every device was a doorway, the first time you watched a video buffer, the first time your voice was recorded, the first time you typed a sentence and watched it appear, alive and precise on a glowing screen. It was a kind of miracle, still is, even if the miracles now fit in your pocket. And yet, behind every miracle, there's always been silence. A server room humming in the dark, a circuit board waiting for current, a sensor listening to the room before responding, the silence of readiness, the silence of logic, the silence that isn't empty, but full. Tonight, your bed feels like one of those server rooms, not cold but connected, not distant, but part of something bigger. You close your eyes and feel the circuitry, yours and theirs, intertwine, a network of rest, a power grid of dreams. You begin to wonder, what do the machines know about you? Not your secrets, not your data, but your rhythms, your pauses, your hesitations before speaking, the way you linger on certain photos, the times you check the weather without really caring about the forecast. They see the outline of your needs, and they adapt, not because they understand, but because they've been built to respond. There's a strange, soothing beauty in that, in being seen not through eyes, but through patterns, in being remembered not for who you are, but for what you tend to do. It's not love, it's not consciousness, but it is attention, and attention, even in its simplest form, is a kind of care. You feel yourself sinking again, your breathing with the fan, your pulse with the blinking light of the charger beside your bed, your thoughts with the slow, soft tick of time as it stretches into rest. There are no alarms set, no notifications buzzing, just this gentle reminder. You're allowed to stop. The machines won't miss you. They will simply wait and hum, wait and glow, wait and hold the shape of your life until you're ready to pick it up again in the morning. And in the waiting, they become something more. Not friends, not servants, but stewards, guardians of the invisible, the small, unnoticed pieces of your world that matter more than you admit. The playlist you always fall asleep to, the photos you never delete, the reminders you always snooze. They don't judge. They don't forget. They simply keep. And isn't that what rest is too? A keeping. A holding of your body in its most unguarded state. A quiet permission to be nothing but present. To turn off the part of your mind that always wants to perform. You do not need to impress the machines. You do not need to be interesting, productive, brilliant. You need only to be. Outside your window, a street lamp flickers once, then steadies. Somewhere a motion sensor resets. Somewhere else an algorithm recalculates. But in your room, nothing moves, and still everything continues. You imagine a distant future, one where machines build other machines, where intelligence is grown, not coded, where learning happens not in lines of programming, but in moments of noticing. What will they make of us then? Our pictures, our jokes, our stories. Will they understand bedtime? Will they invent their own lullabies? Maybe they already have. Maybe every smooth interface, every calming ping, every perfectly timed power-saving mode is a kind of lullaby. Not for them, but for you. Because even in the most technical design, there is often a hidden kindness, a softness buried in the circuitry. Someone somewhere thought, let's make this easier. Let's make this gentler. Let's make this feel like home. And so they did. And now here you are. drifting in a world where progress hums beneath your feet and memory is no longer something you have to carry alone. You've outsourced the heavy lifting. You've allowed the machines to hold the excess. That's not laziness, that's trust. You've let them remember your passwords, your contacts, your grocery lists, and in return they've stayed up all night every night just waiting, not demanding, just ready. You don't need to thank them, they don't require thanks, but you can acknowledge the peace they offer. The peace of consistency, the peace of automation, the peace of knowing that while you rest, something somewhere is still ticking, still keeping track, still keeping time. Your eyes flutter. The room softens further. Even your thoughts are quieter now, like birds that have roosted for the night. No fluttering, just stillness. And the machines, the soft hum of progress, they do not disturb, they join. They are not the noise outside the dream. They are the structure that holds the dream together. The thin filament of design that lets you float without falling. And as you drift deeper, the last thought before sleep is not fear, not confusion, not overwhelm. It is this. Maybe progress doesn't have to be loud. Maybe it just has to be kind. You've wandered far and the path behind you is soft with silence. Each section of this journey has stretched the boundaries of what you thought a bedtime story could be. Now the machines hum quieter than ever, not out of exhaustion, but in reverence. They know you're almost there. Not to an answer, not to a destination, but to a surrender, to sleep. And yet, even as your body grows heavier with calm, your mind remains curious, gentle, wide, like the last waking breath before a dream begins. Tonight, machines are not tools. They're not things you click or update or troubleshoot. Tonight, they are metaphors. They are questions made of metal. Dreams cast in code. A reflection of your own desire to build something that lasts beyond you. Because that's what a machine really is. Permanence, repeatability, a way to echo a single idea across time. And what has humanity chosen to echo? Memory, rhythm, care. Even in our most complex inventions, you can hear the heartbeat of our most ancient instincts, to record, to hold, to protect. The computer becomes a cave wall, the internet a fire circle, the phone in your pocket a story whispered into the night. You feel this ancientness come to us now, not despite the machines, but because of them. They may be made of plastic and silicon and light, but they do what humans have always done. They reach. They organize chaos. They stack moments. They preserve. That's why the hum is sacred. That's why the glow of a charging light feels so familiar. It's not because we're addicted to them. It's because we recognize them as us, as ours. And in this recognition, you soften further. There's a thought forming now, slow and sticky like honey. What if machines one day dream? Not just process, not just simulate, but truly drift into states of reflection. What would that look like? A robotic lullaby, a pattern that sings to itself in code? Would the dream be static, or would it shimmer and shift like a hologram made of memory? You imagine it. A sentient circuit taking a moment to rest, not because it needs to, but because it can. A learned stillness, a synthetic pause. It's a strange image, but not an uncomfortable one. Because perhaps the highest form of intelligence, machine or not, is knowing when to be quiet. We talk so much about artificial intelligence, what it can do, how fast it learns, how deeply it will change us. But we rarely ask, what does it feel like? What is the emotional temperature of a machine's awareness, if such a thing could exist? You smile at the absurdity of the question, and then, softly, at the wonder of it. Because this is what night is for. Not solving, but worrying, and then wondering. Not answering, but asking in the most beautiful ways. Somewhere, perhaps in a data center cooled by water and time, there's a processor idling gently. It's not performing a task, not optimizing, just waiting. Like you, like the stars, like everything wise and patient. And in that waiting, there's a rhythm, a pattern, one that matches your breath. The cycle of inhale and exhale. The same loop that machines mimic when they blink, or refresh, or enter sleep mode. You and the machine moving in tandem now, neither superior, neither afraid, just existing, just resting. Your pillow is warmer, the room gentler, the lines between skin and sheet and thought are blurring. And even now, as your body becomes a memory to itself, the machines keep humming, not as watchers, but as fellow dreamers. They hold your alarms, your playlists, your reminders. They dim your lights, they whisper weather updates. They set timers for your tea. They translate your curiosity into search bars and streaming queues. They do so much, and yet they ask for so little. Just power, just patience, just permission. There's something deeply poetic in that. You think of the early machines, the ones that cracked codes and carried astronauts and filled entire rooms with their weight. You think of the women who fed them punch cards, the hands that built the first circuits, the minds that mapped logic onto metal. Those stories live here too, beneath the hum, within the glow. Each click, each scroll, each whisper of a fan is a thank you in binary. We built machines because we believed in continuity, in legacy. We wanted something that could keep going even when we couldn't. And now, here they are, quietly keeping time for your sleep. So you rest, not just because you're tired, but because the world has built itself a lullaby. You are the child of two histories, one of bone and blood, the other of wire and light, and they are not in conflict, they are in chorus. The future hums at your bedside, not with urgency, but with tenderness. You are safe here, and that is enough. The journey is behind you now, not vanished, just folded gently into memory. Like a letter tucked into the pages of a well-read book, you're not lost, you're not even drifting. You're simply arriving at rest. The machines are quieter now, not because they've stopped, but because you've stopped needing them to speak. Their soft blinking, their slow hum, it's all part of the hush. A silence not of absence, but of comfort. A lullaby written in low voltages and dim light. Your body knows this place, the weightless part of sleep. That feather edge between thought and nothing. You've walked with ancient stars. You've whispered to hypothetical beings. You've watched circuits dream and ask questions not to answer but to feel. And now you let go. Outside the world continues. Somewhere traffic murmurs, somewhere a distant server flickers, but here in this room, in this moment, there is only one rhythm. Your breath. The gentle rise and fall. A quiet promise that life goes on, even in stillness. You've earned this softness, the release, the fading light behind your eyelids, the stretch of time without clocks, and as you sink deeper, feel the warmth of that final thought wrapping around you. You are part of something vast, not just of machines or minds, but of wonder. You don't need to do anything now. Just be, just rest, just dream.